Hi, everybody. This is Todd Krieger. Today, I want to talk about this topic: why you're not broken. Your nervous system is overloaded. That's the name of it. Why you're not broken. Your nervous system is overloaded. Now, what I mean by that is people oftentimes, when they don't handle their emotions well, when they're anxious, when they're depressed, when they're quick to react, when they freeze, they go, "What's wrong with me? Something wrong with me. I must be broken. I'm damaged." Now, there are people that are traumatized, but I think we gotta be careful about the words we choose because number one, broken is very demeaning, and number two, it's not accurate. Oftentimes, it's really all about. I said oftentimes, but the truth is always. It's about how our nervous system regulates us so that we can have some way of coping with challenging issues. So, for example, one question a person might have is, why do I just get all emotionally flooded when my partner just criticizes me? Hmm. Well, even though nobody likes to be criticized, there's a survival mechanism that we have in our central nervous system. I'll talk about it more specifically from the standpoint of what's called polyvagal theory. I want to go into a little biology because if you understand this, you're not going to be so hard on yourself. And I've mentioned this in other places, but this definitely is this bears repeating. And that is that it was discovered that we have a nerve called the vagus nerve that extends from the base of our brain all the way down to our small intestines. It covers our lungs, our heart, our gastrointestinal areas of our body. And it's very, very linked to how we deal with threat. So, the way the vagus nerve helps protect us from threat is not up to us consciously. For example, if a child is put into experiences when they felt helpless or trapped, oftentimes they learn to cope by freezing. And their nervous system, via the vagus nerve, actually, to be more specific, it's a dorsal, which is the back end of the vagus nerve, gets activated, and the person freezes to deal with this threat. Maybe they're not able to escape out of it or fight their way out of it, so they go numb and they freeze. And even people that haven't had that kind of childhood, they might have a tendency to freeze to protect themselves, like the deer in the headlights just stops. And so when I say the nervous system's overloaded, it means that whatever's going on here, you can't metabolize in such a way that you could bear the pain of it, so that you freeze or play dead or get paralyzed to cope with the threat. So when people are communicating with their partners, oftentimes some people find they just can't find the words. They just freeze. And they go, "What's wrong with me?" And their partner is judging them because they don't understand. I mean, I understand the partner that judges, like, "Why can't you tell me things?" But it's deeper than that. And it's because the person is just shutting down. Now, there are things people can do to help them with that, which I'll talk about towards the end. But I'm just saying we need to understand that just because my partner is freezing, it doesn't mean that they're pushing me away on purpose. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. It just means that it's a way of coping. It's the way they've learned to cope. Whether they had a childhood that I described where they were often feeling helpless, or maybe they had other experiences. Maybe they felt that way in school. Maybe they couldn't find the words. Maybe they had some difficulties talking in public. Maybe they have. I had a client who called me because he just would not be able to think straight in front of adults. He was okay with children and he was a teacher, but his relationship life was really suffering. And his relationship with his close, people that he was um, close to really was suffering because he would just freeze. He couldn't speak. And when went into his past, we found that his father would oftentimes yell at him because he said, "You don't speak right." And he was very, very young. And he was one of those kids that learned how to speak, but slower. But if he had a father that didn't do that, I believe, I mean, I don't have proof of this, but I believe that if he had a father that allowed his son to progress in learning in on his pace, he wouldn't have felt so humiliated, so embarrassed. So now every time he spoke, there was always a fear of embarrassment, and his nervous system would shut down. His dorsal part of his vagus nerve would get activated, and he would freeze. And I'll tell you what I did with him in a little bit, but I just want to move on from here. Okay, but he's a good example of someone who would get paralyzed and freeze. So this kind of emotional freezing or emotional flooding that leads to freezing and is often the result of unhealed patterns. It's not bad partners. And that's why I'm trying to explain to you the science behind it. So, like I said, people freeze because they, um, that it's their way of coping with intolerable feelings that they don't know what to do with. Now, some people don't freeze; they explode during arguments. Let's say. So, why do I explode? Why do I lose it when my partner just said a minor complaint about me? Okay, once again, their nervous system is being overloaded. Overloaded. It's not a broken person. It's not a bad partner. It's a person who um, has learned to activate their sympathetic nervous system as opposed to the freeze response of the dorsal vagus nerve. The sympathetic nervous system gets activated and they go right into fight or flight. But in this case, if they're exploding, it's usually fight. It's a way of protecting themselves, and it's not a conscious choice. Now, I'm not saying that's an excuse. Okay, people they can't do harm, so they got to learn. But I'm just saying, just to automatically think that you're broken or your partner to judge you is missing the truth. And really, the only way we heal is by facing what's really, really true. And thinking that I'm a bad person and you're a bad person is never the truth. I'm a broken person or you're a broken person, never the truth. So the sympathetic nervous system gets activated because that was the way they protected themselves. Maybe when they were younger, uh, they screamed and yelled and felt powerful as opposed to powerless, or maybe they would run away to avoid problems. So fight or flight worked for them. So again, when you're emotionally flooded, it just means you have too much emotion to handle it in a healthy way. So the question then is, can we rewire our reactions? And that answer is unequivocally yes. So there are three ways that we tend to respond to threat, and I gave you two of them. First, we freeze. Another aspect of freeze is to dissociate and just not even be fully present. Sometimes people dissociate so fully they don't even know what's going on. They leave their bodies. Again, as to being trapped and having unavoidable pain that where their sense of it is, I can't do anything about it. It's not a conscious thing. What they it's what their body does to protect themselves. And the second one was the fight or flight. The third is when the ventral part of the vagus nerve, the front part of the vagus nerve gets activated, allows a person to do what we call social engagement, helps them co-regulate with let's say, I'm talking mainly about intimate relationships, be able to co-regulate with their intimate partner, um, help them regulate and soothe the other person from their stress, and as well as allow the other person to help regulate them. And they work it out together, and they start to create a safe relationship together. And when a couple can do that, it begins to rewire their reactions because they start to realize there's a third way, there's another way. And we are now not stuck in survival mode. So basically, how we rewire our reactions is when we learn to be safe. And one of those ways is to develop healthy communication patterns with our partner and practicing it over time. And we start to realize, oh, that reaction is not necessary. I could tell my partner that I'm angry and then my partner will be there for me. Or my partner could be angry at me and it's not the end of the world and I can be there for them. Another way to rewire your reactions, of course, is to, get some help, get some therapy. Um, the trauma work that I do, because usually it is from some kind of trauma, like this man that had trouble speaking to adults would freeze, I usually use EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and I help them with that. So realize that both are very important ways to regulate. Um, Learning to communicate in a healthy way with our partner is one, but also to help heal, especially the traumas that led to the emotional flooding in the first place, that led us to freeze or to fight or flight. Now we can learn new ways of being and regulating ourselves. But the man who had trouble speaking, what we did is we went back in his past and which was very alive in the present. There was a part of him that wasn't his age, which was 40. There was a part of him that was more like 3 or 4, maybe even younger, that felt the humiliation from his father. And we went back there and we were able to use EMDR to resolve his process, his trauma. And he began having some success talking to adults. It was only after 2 sessions of EMDR that he texted me and said, "This is like a miracle. I can't believe what's going on." I was able to speak to my peers and my superiors, and I was able to be clear and express exactly what I wanted to say. And this is liberation. And he continued to do his therapy work to kind of grow into being the adult he really was, and to begin now using his new sense of self to get out there and date in a more adult way, and to use his voice to express what he feels, what he wants, to show interest in the other person, all those things. So the key in both of those ways of learning to um, teach our nervous system new ways of being is, again, you want to do it with your partner or another trusted person, or you could, of course, sometimes we need to deal with the trauma in a more deeper way, and we might need some professional assistance to help us deal with the trauma, like I did with this 40-year-old man. So what happens with the couples I treat when we teach them how to regulate, sometimes that is all they need. They start to experience, this is the first time that I've been able to feel safe in even dealing with difficult situations with my partner, that it does start to rewire that brain and helps us regulate. Sometimes when I work with couples, I will use EMDR if that's needed, to help them um, remove the blocks to be two healthy adults communicating. So to recognize that if you're in an intimate relationship, that your intimate relationship, which may be triggering some of your freeze or fight or flight or emotional flooding, happens often. Reason for that is oftentimes our parents didn't show us how to co-regulate well together, so we don't know. But what if you can learn how to do that with your partner, miracles could happen. And I have a program called From Bickering and Escalating to Connecting and Loving. And you can click on the link to find out more about this action-packed, information-packed, approximately 90-minute session, a class, I should say, not a session, but a class, seminar. And as you apply some of the things to help you go from that bickering and escalating to connecting and loving, you'll be able to see how your nervous system can regulate in healthier adult ways and how you can help your partner regulate in healthy adult ways too. You're working on you, but you're also helping your partner out. And it's a very powerful program. So thank you for listening. This is Todd Krieger, making the world safe for love.